Yeah, you can't seriously think that today's margins for a company in a hyper growth period are relevant. It just shows me you don't know shit about boxing. You're LARPing. You're coping that the company has gigantic revenue growth. Scale, I mean, when you're growing like that, you're investing. You're overspending. And when your company reaches closer to a steady state, then you worry about your margin structure. If you ever run a company, you know this. Nobody gives a fuck about the underscaled margins. No, when you're really growing fast, you're gonna spend some you're gonna have some expenses that are just not gonna happen once you get bigger, or they're just not gonna scale the same way once you get bigger. The company's still growing very rapidly, so I'm talking about Palantir. It's almost completely a software company. Consulting is a very small sort of part of that. Yeah, I mean, just look at the gross margins. Gross margins always matter, of course. Palantir has high gross margins. I mean, look, I'm not saying I run my company like that, but it's a strategy. It's worked. It's worked for a lot of companies, including Amazon and others. Yeah, gross margins 80%. And they've accelerated their growth. Two, three, four, five, six, seven, 8 quarters in a row. Their growth rate has gone up. That's pretty unprecedented. They're doing something right. Assuming that continues, I mean, 5 billion in revenue should be in the bag. I mean, it's certainly not cheap, but it's people believe in carp, and if they can grow like this for some years to come, it's not overvalued. They really do have to find a path to 10 billion. 10 billion in revenue. Right now they're around 4 billion. So can they go from 4 billion in revenue to 10 billion in revenue? Seems like that's something this management team can do. They're pretty smart, pretty effective. Now, if you think their growth is going to grind to a halt, it'd be a great short. But I mean, listen, I think part of what you're looking at for a company like this is, yeah, I think they do have a moat for what it's worth, but I think it's more than just do they have a moat. I think it's also, can management deliver new products that will grow the business? And like, if you're around the Peter Thiel, Joe Lonsdale type of world, um, that these guys are constantly working on new products, and they'll find a way to keep growing. Now, maybe they won't, the stock's a great short. And the stock's already pricing in that they'll do that to a large extent. So, if they go from 4 billion to just 8 billion in a couple of years, it'll be relatively disappointing. If they go from 4 billion to 12 billion, I think the stock's probably got upside. So it's basically just like any other company. It's a management trust question. Can you actually trust Bone Crusher? Can you trust that they'll do bone crushing revenue growth? And, you're always functionally trusting management and betting on management in most companies. Now, especially growth companies, you're literally, saying, I trust that these guys will find a way to grow. I don't even know what that way is going to be, but I trust that it's going to happen. And that's quite a leap of faith, that you take when you do these kinds of investments. Whereas some of the other kind of investing you can do, like value investing, it doesn't really matter if management's that creative. No, a 20% revenue grower that's consistent 20% revenue growth is worth over 100 times cash flow, over 100 times earnings. I mean, that's just the nature of PE. It's like it's not a very good metric because it doesn't really sort of incorporate a little compounding at all, especially high compounding. Because if you're growing revenue 20%, they're growing revenue 40%, mind you. So if you're growing revenue 20%, you're going to be growing earnings at least 30 or 40%. So forward PE is better than backward PE, but you still have to go forward as many years as you can, and that's not always easy. I mean, look, forecasting is just hard, period. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. But certainly you want to be long a company that's going to grow revenue very quickly for a long time. I mean, if you ask Buffett, he'll tell you that compounding is just so you catch up very quickly. Oh my gosh, I have a million PE ratio or something like that. Couple of years of 40% revenue growth. I mean, you're talking about potentially compounding earnings by 100%. A couple of years, 4x your earnings. I don't care what your PE is. You're starting to look attractive after enough years of doing that. PE matters to a value investor to a certain extent. It depends on the company. PE breaks down very quickly when you're looking at a hypergrowth company. I define hypergrowth as anything sort of more than 20%. Because one, I mean, talking about sales growth, by the way. Sales growth is less than earnings growth always. So you have earnings growth that's well above usually 20%. So PE is just too static of a figure to incorporate and approximate long-term earnings, because long-term earnings is a real big moving target. PE is really good when the earnings aren't changing much. Now you're basically valuing a bond at that point, but Psst, what? Oh my love. What's up, my love? Better not be mean to my kitty. That's my baby. Cat wars here. The old cat versus the baby cat. Baby cat's tormenting the old cat. I know you guys don't give a shit. But that's my life right now. I'm not buying Chag now. I mean, if they can grow spaghetti, I think the challenge for NVIDIA is a lot of people don't think they're going to grow. A lot of people think it's all over. Some people think we're so back. Some people think it's all over. So if NVIDIA is going to grow 50% earnings for the next few years, it's a screaming buy. But these guys I hope they're having fun. It doesn't look like it, but maybe they're having fun. Chasing each other. I'll never understand these animals.
Autofilled.
I think you have to have some vision towards earnings. I mean, I do think that, the Cathie Wood style investor is just sort of thinking about all that matters is that revenue growth. As long as that revenue growth's above 20, 30, 40%, the stock's a buy no matter what. And obviously that's just fallacious on its face. I mean, there's just no mathematical reason why that'd be the case, right? There's always kind of an approximate of, all right, this is too much. And while I think some people think that's the case for Palantir, like I said, 2025 revenue will probably be somewhere close to 4 billion and probably run rate well over that at the end of the year. So, if you think the company will double revenue over time, which is almost certain, they'll probably do that pretty quickly. You're paying, around 40 times for Palantir. If you have a truly visionary company that's going to keep growing long term, the theory is this is going to be like an Oracle or an SAP or like a Salesforce. Now, it's already got the valuation of those companies to some extent. But, if you can get, to a 300 or 400 billion cap, like an Oracle or something, that's the goal of Palantir. But, look, I'm not long it, but if I had to trade it, I'd probably be long. And then if I had to short other things against it, I could probably hedge out most of the momentum and capture some alpha. So, look, I mean, it's been a great ride for the people who've been in early. I'm just saying you have to be open-minded about growth stocks, and I'm a value guy. I'm a very traditional value guy, but investors like Lone Pine and Viking, they've shown that you can be a value investor in growth stocks. They bought Google at the IPO. And if whatever your investing framework is called, value, growth, your own special method, the Nibbles method, it doesn't matter what you call it. But if your method would have stopped you from buying Google in 2005, that's a bad method. You want the method that would have had you buying Google in 2005 and 6, buying Facebook in 2009 and 10. You want the method that did that. And a lot of the methods I'm hearing from you guys, they're fine, but they're too Graham and Dodd. They're too Graham and Dodd to really work. Look, you're sort of curve fitting to a certain extent that my method has to get me all the growth winners, but not get me the losers. And yeah, it's a discriminator, with a really good, organovos, with a really good sort of assay and sort of ROC, if you know diagnostics.
Autofilled.
So it's just not that simple, unfortunately. And we all know that, right? It'd be amazing if we could buy all the growth stocks that make money and avoid the ones that suck, and buy all the value stocks that are cheap and defensive. We all want that, but the reality is it's just not. There's no investing method that gets it all right. But I don't want to miss the next Google because the PE is too high or some bullshit like the contrived nonsense.
Autofilled.
Yeah, I think quant's kind of Quant's kind of going to eliminate
Order
traditional
partially
investing
filled.
to a certain extent.
Order filled.
I think we all have to join the computer revolution.
Order filled. Order filled.
Yeah, I'm trying to blow your mind right now. Change your whole perspective on shit. But you know, one of the things that's also important to have in investing is conviction. You know, your method might be an old crotchety value investor that smells bad, but if IBM is doing a deal, but if you stick to it and you hone it, I don't know. That's not the end of the world. You know, you got conviction and you have a method. Good. You know, that's okay. I think that's better than not applying your method correctly and changing your mind every 2 seconds.
Order filled.
You know, conviction and
Order filled.
consistent application. I think that's crucial.
Order filled.
Listen, I'm gonna keep it a buck. Protect your goddamn neck. Warren Buffett's nodding right now. That's right. I agree with the Wu-Tang Clan here. Protect your fucking neck.